it wasn't bringing a chair to the table. We wanted to create the table and then everybody have the chair that best represents them at the table.
Welcome to the Smart Talk series, the show for professionals who want strategies, tips, and real talk about all things PR, marketing, and social media. Your host is Melissa Vella Williamson, an award-winning, accredited, and nationally recognized PR pro and communication thought leader. And now your host, Melissa Vella Williamson.
Hello and welcome to the Smart Talk series. I'm Melissa Vella Williamson. This season, our focus is on cultural strategy. Today, I'm joined by two guests, Ben Finzel and LaTricia Harper Woods, APR. Ben Finzel is president of Renew PR, a Washington, D.C. based public relations firm. Ben and his team of 7 independent PR professionals provide advice, counsel, and outreach on strategy, messaging, media, and partnerships to clients tackling energy, environmental, and equity issues and opportunities. Ben is one of 2 founders of the Change Agencies, the national network of inclusive PR firms focused on changing the way business and organizations communicate across cultures. Also joining us today is LaTricia Harper Woods, APR, the second founder of the Change Agencies. LaTricia Woods is an award-winning, accredited public relations professional with more than 29 years of industry experience. She is the founder and CEO of Mahogany Zan Communications, where she leads a talented team of professionals and serves a national client portfolio. Welcome, Ben and LaTricia.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you too. We always have a great time together. Tell us more about your work together through the Change Agencies.
Well, this idea was really inspired by my friendship with LaTricia. We had talked about doing something together right after we met, actually at the Counselors Academy, where we know you from, Melissa. And we talked about it. And when I couldn't find a national network of inclusive agencies, I just suggested to LaTricia that we start our own. And that's where the Change Agencies came from.
And when Ben called me to share his idea, I just thought it was the exact right idea at the right time. We had spent several years serving on panels together, talking about how to create inclusive communities authentically. And we had gotten to the point where it just seemed like we were giving the same presentation in ways over and over and over and over again. And we were just like, at this point, I don't think they're going to get it. So why don't we help them in a different way? If we can't get them to be the change themselves, let's just change it for them. And so that was how the Change Agencies was born in its first iteration.
I can certainly understand that. I maybe that's just part of a PR person's job in general, but when you add inclusive communications and the DEI, sensitive and compassionate and really empowering approach, I think that education and understanding has to be reiterated time and time again. And as public sentiment and political sentiment shift and change, you kind of have to redirect all the time, right, on the fundamentals of this work. So I'm so glad for the work you're doing because you are being the change and you're really helping empower others to think about this and really be smart enough and brave enough to go there. So I love that about what you're doing. So this season in particular is focused on understanding and incorporating, to your point, LaTricia, cultural strategy as communicators. So what can you add about the current state of cultural competence in our PR industry, particularly from your community specialties point of view?
Well, Melissa, I will say today is a great day to be a Black woman from my community specialty point of view.
Right.
I think with the news that has been permeating the 24-hour cycles for the past couple of weeks, there has been a tremendous focus on not just defining your culture, but who has the ability and the authority to define your culture. And I think that is at the very heart of creating a cultural strategy. You have to be able to develop and authentically implement and communicate a strategy that embodies not only the cultures that are a part of your workforce, but a part of all of the audiences that you wish to communicate with and you do communicate with on a regular basis. And I think as we continue to see how our leaders get stuck in this construct of what is culture, what is race, what is ethnicity, who gets to determine that, we can see that we still have challenges that I think as communicators, we are uniquely empowered to address. And I think for us as an industry, this is the time for communicators to step up and step into the limelight and guide their clients to what it means to develop a cultural strategy and how they are best to assist them in developing theirs.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Ben, from your point of view.
Well, first of all, great focus for the season. So yay. You must be in PR because you're right on top of things there. I think the current state is really fractured. So thinking about the LGBTQ community, there's a whole lot of great LGBTQ communicators in our industry. And a few of them are in positions of authority, but most are diffuse, kind of spread out, not centrally located in terms of where the power is in the industry. And I think, there's all these assumptions. We always make the jokes, oh, PR is so gay friendly, right? It's all like, white women and gay men, right? Or whatever. That's only really true to a point. And I think that's actually sort of damaging to sort of perpetuate that. And I would say that there is still a rainbow ceiling in the industry, and there's still only so far that LGBTQ people can go in most agencies. And that goes back to the point LaTricia was making before about why we started the change agency, because we've been having these conversations again and again and again with colleagues in our industry, and somehow it never really sinks in. So I think, there is not a broad ability to understand and engage with our communities because there aren't enough of us in all the right places to be able to do that. And that's just not LGBTQ people, that's people of color across the board. I think specifically to my community, to the LGBTQ community, historically, there hasn't really been, quote, money in doing this work, right? It didn't seem like you were going to get rich quickly being an LGBTQ PR person focusing on engaging our community. So the folks who have done that, and there are many, and they have been doing great work for a long time, some of them have been kind of marginalized a bit, right? And, I think that's really ironic when you look at the fact that the estimates are something like $4 trillion in purchasing power in my community. But that is the sort of state of where things are in the industry. So in addition to everything LaTricia said, which I agree with, just thinking about, our industry and the level of competence, I'd say, is pretty low, except for those folks who actually come from our community and have experience engaging our communities.
Yeah, and I think that's why this work is so important and helpful, because part of it and the work that I've been doing in cultural strategy has been a few years now, where I actually like put that phrase together and name my Public Relations Society of America column that, and it was very strategic and intentional. I did not want to name the column or kind of take over the column and this is the DEI column. And therefore some people, I don't know who always, but some people just literally won't read it because I don't do that work or it makes me uncomfortable or whatever polarizing reason maybe they felt like was surrounded with these topics. So I was thoughtful and I thought, let's just make this about people's preferences and how they like to communicate and engage and live their lives. And that has to do with their cultural backgrounds and their cultural preferences, right? If we can connect there, we can go beyond demographics and old stereotypes. And so that thought and that reasoning was part of trying to normalize having these conversations and growing in our competency and going beyond competency. Like, who wants to be just competent at something, right? Like none of us on this recording for sure. So that's part of, I think, what inspired me and you all, or what you're doing is just, we need to say what needs to be said so we can figure out what the solution is and really make it unifying as possible for people. So from your point of view, I want to ask, and we can start with you, LaTricia, like what were some of the key drivers for the creation of your cultural strategy at the change agencies?
I think that's a very good question. I think for us, or for my half of the us, and Ben will speak to his, it wasn't bringing a chair to the table. We wanted to create the table, and then everybody have the chair that best represents them at the table. And there's a lot of networks out there, as you know, in our industry where organizations can align. But how often do you want to be the only one or in the minority number when our culture and our society is such a greater representation than what we see? And also being one of few Black female PR practitioners, representation matters. When I talk to communication classes or when I meet young ladies from universities, they're like, oh my gosh, I thought about PR, but I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know who to go to. So creating a platform, creating a network of like-minded individuals that could align their skill set and produce amazing work that could move the needle. And being that representation were some of my key drivers.
There's always at least one mic drop when LaTricia talks. So that was the first one. Um, as usual, I agree with everything she said. I will just add that the way the change agencies is structured is also sort of part of why it works in terms of the cultural strategy. So to be a member of the change agencies, you have to be a member of one or more diverse communities. And you have to have expertise engaging one or more of those communities. There's a whole lot of really smart gay people doing PR. It doesn't mean they know anything about, engaging our audience, right? There's a whole lot of smart gay people who do science or tech or healthcare or public affairs or whatever it might be. That doesn't mean they understand how to engage our community. So really having that understanding about how to engage the LGBT community, the Asian community, the African American community, the Hispanic community, the indigenous communities, right? That is really important. And that is kind of where we started. And that really ensures that we don't have folks who aren't qualified to do the work. And it means that we can really set ourselves apart from folks who say, oh, sure, we can do that, and you hire that large multinational PR firm and you get three blonde women named Megan, right? No offense to blonde women named Megan, but
Oh, Megan.
that ain't diverse. So, as you've heard, I think from both of us, we wanted to be different. We wanted to do something different than what had been done before. And we really focused on that authenticity piece from a place of actually meaning it rather than just having it be a buzzword. And that's really what drove us in the creation of it.
And Melissa, I just say to all of your listeners, if you don't have a Ben Finzel in your life and in your corner, you got to go get one. I'm not sure where we clone him, but he is always the biggest cheerleader for everyone, so much so that we're like, quit cheering everybody else on and pat yourself on the back. Because he does amazing things and he's just always there for everyone. And so I just want to give him his flowers because he never wants flowers for himself.
No, we need to. Way to go, Ben. Well, yeah, I saw
thank you, LaTricia.
It's helpful to point out because it's really needed in our industries because we do so much work to support and benefit and cheer on and coach our clients that especially if you own your own practice or like you all, right? Too, in some ways, you need that support yourself. And particularly, I would say if you are that representative, because to your point, LaTricia, it is hard to be the only. And I know before I've heard it kind of phrased like being the token. And I've shifted my mindset around it to be, if I'm going to be that representative, I'm going to be a hell of a one, right? I'm going to also open the door, make the table, like you said, invite people to create their own chairs that they fit best in, but to join in the work. And so I think what you're doing here is really important on both sides of that, both for that workforce that could be now and in the future, but then also in the workplaces they're in and the types of clients they might work with and really making sure those organizations are supporting their communities in a way that, again, is enriching and just reflective of where we are in the US. Like that's the part that I get a little wild about is how are we not connecting the dots? Is if you don't care about people at all, this is just a numbers, right, equation that we are more multicultural in the US than ever. If you just look at the stats, like the audience that you've been speaking to before, the hires you're looking for before, they're not going to look and act the same at all. They don't today, and they certainly won't tomorrow. That's certainly something, Ben, that I talk a lot about in the Hispanic Latino community, that if we are the largest ethnic minority group, and in some states and some cities, we are no longer categorized as minority. We are the majority. And so those terms need to move on, right? In some ways.
Exactly.
That, yeah, we should reflect and have the right people in the right seats. So big shifts coming. Ben, what were you going to say on that?
I just back to the point you made about being the only and getting the term token out, et cetera. One of the things that we have seen as we have built the change agencies in this second iteration of having members and having 13 members along with the two of us now is that one of the drivers of interest from members is that network of, to your point, Melissa, other people who look like me. And I, for whatever reason, did not see that coming. The number of members, both new and old, who say to us, wow, if I get nothing else out of my membership other than being in community and in connection and in conversation with other people who look like me, it's going to be the most important thing I've done. And that has been so just, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. It's been so empowering and so helpful because what we're doing is really creating a place for people who have been doing the work. Let's be clear, these are not new entrants, right? Some of our members have been doing this work for decades, with plural, right? They've been doing the work. They haven't necessarily been connected to other folks who look like them. They haven't necessarily had the opportunities, despite trying and despite being leaders on their own, right, to really do something like this at a national level. So we're creating that together and we're doing that work together. And that is kind of amazing. One little blow against that ridiculousness that we all have to face.
Right. Creating that space or place for them as well. And you're right, Ben. I think that one of the findings that I've run into doing diversity work, both for a corporation and running diversity councils, and then focusing in on the communication and programming side for others, is that affinity groups, right? Or groups of the same kinds or types of people, whether that's they look the same, they're in the same phase of life in terms of being a caregiver, they all are dog lovers, like whatever binds them really matters to people. It really matters to all people. And that's why I think we're seeing some of, on the radical side, some of the negative things happening when we get into politics, which we won't go too deep into so people keep listening. But when we're built and we're still wired with those cave people brains and we're looking for safety and we're looking for our groups and our tribes. And I think if we want to calm and unify some of the communities down, it's the idea of, there's that old saying of birds of a feather flock together. And there's a natural aspect to that. And it's okay. And so let's leverage that and beautify it where possible. So I love that the change agencies is an open door for that.
If I could just say something about two important things that you just said that I want to make sure your listeners hear. Not only is it just okay, it's needed because there is safety there. And another aspect of what our members say to what Ben said earlier is they have a safe place where they can go and not just share ideas, but vent. Because sometimes you just have to pop in an email or on a chat and say, did anybody see that interview that happened at NABJ? Because I got questions. And, and that really happened. As soon as that interview was over, we were in a chat, we were in an email, and Ben was like, wait a minute, I haven't seen it yet. What's going on? Then Ben had to go say, and he was like, OMG, what in the world? Because, the three Black women in the email was like, excuse me, I have questions, I have concerns. I I'm not understanding what just took place on national TV. But you have to have that safe zone that says, okay, I just need to be in a group right now where I can say what's on my mind and not fear retaliation or retribution or clap back or anything. And I can just speak my mind and I know that I'm okay. And so is something that is very needed, especially in the climate that we're in right now. Because sometimes you just have to say, "Am I crazy?" And people are like, "No, no, girl, it's not you. It's the other people." Okay, good. Okay, good. I'm straight and I can go back to work.
Right. How much has changed? Is this what's okay now? And
Right.
you know what? A lot of it, the fundamentals of our practice and of being good people, they stand true. So let's hold to those tightly. Well, what are some other ways that you've authentically created this organization so that it embodies the cultural nuances of different target audiences?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
I think by including leaders from those audiences in our membership, I mean, literally all we are is people from communities of color and LGBTQ communities. That's it. So, we have folks who were already leaders in the industry. And I think, one of the things that sometimes people think when they look at a group like this or they look at this sort of conversation, just because you don't know these people doesn't mean they aren't there. Just because you haven't heard of this organization or that organization doesn't mean folks have not been out there doing the work. There's a whole lot of smart, talented, inspiring people of color and LGBTQ people in our industry doing the work. Like you. I mean, your column, Melissa, right? I mean, you're doing the work and you have been doing the work. And that's really important. And I don't think that gets enough credit. You're not getting paid for that column. You're doing that column on top of your client work, on top of this podcast, on top of everything else. That's a lot of work. And it takes a certain kind of person to want to do the extra bit, right? And
Yeah.
really get out there and put themselves out there, which is hard, particularly right now. So, I will say, as we built the change agencies, we knew some of our members before, and some of them we didn't. We met a lot, sort of along the way through recommendations from our members and from other people. Carmela Glover at the Diversity Action Alliance has been a real champion and ally, and it's helped us introduce us to people like Sonia Diaz and people like that. So, it's been both impressive and also really humbling because you realize, wow, I thought I was smart. Oh no. I thought I had experience. Oh no, right? I mean, our members know how to engage with different audiences because they come from those audiences and they have been doing that work in those communities, but also in the different industry sectors too, for decades. And that makes a real difference.
Yeah, absolutely. That lived experience plus professional experience is what's so powerful about the work. Because on the flip side, right, if someone just looks at one of us and assumes that we should be able to do this work and we've never focused on that community, then that's not fair to either of us. Certainly happens to me in terms of language, right? There's an assumption that I speak Spanish or I must speak Spanish. And that's been part of my career that I've really battled against and struggled with because I wasn't taught Spanish because my parents were ashamed out of speaking it. And now you want me to speak it and I'm feeling ashamed because I don't speak it? Like, make up your mind. So, it's something that's important and I embrace it and we weave it into work, especially as much as we can with those who are fluent. And it's funny, even my Spanish speaking colleagues and friends have a shame for speaking Spanish. And so I think all of us doing this work is really important because that enoughness really matters, even on the professional side too. Tricia, did you want to add anything to that?
I just wanted to say that we have been very strategic in the members that have joined the network. Over the years, we have cultivated quite a robust selection process, and Ben has fine-tuned that. And so when people are recommended to us, we really do an amazing job vetting them to make sure that they are right fit and that they are authentically showing up. And that's very important to us. And so we have grown at what other organizations may have considered a slower pace, but we have grown at a sustainable pace for us because we want to make sure as we build this network that we have the right people in the room at all times so that members feel comfortable, they feel engaged, they feel empowered to connect. And all it takes is one person that can like throw off that DNA. And so we are proudly small and mighty, but we have amassed a really powerful group in the members that we have.
That's perfect, right? You have to be smart about it. You have to be strategic and very conscious of the individuals and how they're showing up. So I love that you all are being very thoughtful in that way. So let's talk about our current political climate just a wee bit. What are some challenges that organizations may face when developing or implementing a cultural strategy?
I was tempted to say so many, and then to ask how much time you have. But but seriously, I think it can be tempting to say, "Oh, I don't want to talk politics," or "That's political. I don't want to go there," right? And then try to develop a strategy that is kind of separate from that. The problem with that is that my identity, my existence is not political. It's personal, sure, but it's not political. So when you refuse to acknowledge the realities of what my community is facing right now, what your community is facing right now, what LaTricia's community is facing right now, you miss so much of the realities of really, how to engage with us. So I think right now more than ever, you have to go there. You can't just sort of say, oh, talking about gay people is political. Talking about, African American culture or just the fact that African American people exist is political. No, 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 no. You have to go there. And the trick is to figure out how to do that in ways that are true to who you are as an organization and what you stand for. So it's really sort of driving back to our values are these. And because our values are these, we care about these issues and we're going to talk about these things in this way. So it really is about matching the audiences to kind of who you are and driving towards where those overlaps are. And I think that's really important. And I think, it starts from a place of defining what we mean by politics, because it's usually used as a code word for lots of things that it is not. And it becomes an excuse to not acknowledge my humanity or your humanity. And that's a real problem.
Yeah, humanity is really important. LaTricia, anything you want to add?
Just to follow up what Ben said, once an organization defines its values, they have to adhere to those values. And so when they publicly say they don't want to address a challenge or address a situation because it's political, your employees and your constituents are watching and they feel that because they feel that that impacts them. And you have to be very careful what you show up to and what you don't, because your employees are like, well, these are what you said our values are. This speaks to those values. How can you not then stand up for those values? Because then you're not standing up for me. You're not standing up for what I believe in. So how important am I to this organization? So like Ben said, we use that political term as a clutch, especially in times like these, where it's very easy to say, oh, I don't want to be, spotlighted because then people are going to attack me from this side or they're going to attack me from that side. But it's important now more than ever for companies to know what their values are and to stand by them.
Yeah, and I think defining them, if you haven't, will be helpful as well, because sometimes that hasn't been done, as we may see doing our work as pros.
That's why we'll always have work, because so many people have not done that and they need our help to figure it out.
Well, that's all super helpful and great. And one other piece of feedback I'll get sometimes, I wonder if you all do, is, well, what about when we try, then we make a mistake and it's cultural appropriation? We're worried about that, Melissa. So how can brands avoid cultural appropriation and ensure authenticity in what they're trying to do with this cultural strategy?
I think cultural appropriation happens when people have the wrong people in the room. Because we've seen these ads come out, we've seen these campaigns come out, and we're like, you must not have run this through the proper channels. And how did this get through the door? So again, it goes back to corporations and organizations having an internal culture that reflects their external audiences, which is part of the frustration that led to the creation of the change agencies. Because I don't know about Ben, but I ran out of fingers on how many times I heard, well, I just can't find Black PR professionals. They don't exist where I live. I'm trying to work with Black organizations and I can't find them where I live. And I'm like, okay, so let me just point out some organizations that I know are near you, because you can't find what you don't open up your eyes and look for.
Let me add a little bit of grace to that, just a teeny bit, because I hear you and feel you on that for sure. There actually was I've heard that too in many different ways. And I will say part of the work that encourages me to keep doing all these extra projects around cultural strategy is that in some communities, there are not enough pros of different communities, right? That are independent, for example, that could be a consultant. For me, for example, I'll talk about in my community, a Hispanic Latino majority community. I can't find a Spanish fluid, bilingual, independent, solo practitioner to work with. And I feel like you'd make double the money if you did that. And so I'm doing a lot of work to encourage that. So I just want to add a little grace that sometimes maybe, let's say, maybe on the consultant level, maybe that's an opportunity in your community. But for sure, you're going to find organizations. Now that I don't have an issue with, of all types, to your point. And especially if you can reach outside of your community and then help create that program or chapter in your area. So you're just inspiring me, LaTricia, but please continue.
Well, and I would advise people, to either connect, grow, or pilfer. You're either going to connect with organizations that align with the skills that you're trying to find. You're going to find students and you're going to grow them into what you need them to be. Or you're going to pilfer somebody from from a company with a really great benefits package and salary, and you're going to steal them from somebody else. But there's ways to do it because and I've had people contact me about finding people in Nebraska and in Alaska, and we've been able to do that. So they're there. But as far as cultural appropriation, there's so many times when people have an idea and they don't run it through different audiences to see how it would connect. And just asking people, how does this messaging make you feel? That makes all the difference. But you can't just go to the same people for the same issues. Don't go to your Latino professionals only when you want to talk about Hispanic issues. They are well versed in other issues. They can advise on other issues. Don't just go to your Black professionals when you want to ask them about your Black History Month collateral. They have other issues that they can advise on. And so that's when companies get really dangerously close to cultural appropriation and not working in an authentic manner. These are employees that are well-rounded. You should consult them on all things. But if they happen to have some special superpowers that you can tap into, that's great. But just remember that they're well-rounded, seasoned professionals.
Yeah. Ben, what would you add?
Just two thoughts. One, to the conversation that you guys just had. I mean, that's part of the reason that we wanted to start the change agencies, as LaTricia said, because we wanted to create an opportunity for elevation of people of color and LGBTQ people in PR, so that if you are looking for those people, you can find them in the change agencies. That is literally the point. So we have Hispanic PR professionals. We have Asian Hispanic PR professionals, African American, LGBT, Indigenous, right? So that was sort of the point. But the other thing that I'll say, and just to put a super fine point on it, the way you ensure authenticity is you engage people from different cultures to get help, right? I mean, this is what LaTricia was talking about, right? And I think just to underline that, I will say it in plain words, you can't do this work with just a group of well-meaning straight white people. You can't. You have to do the work and hire the people. You have to spend the money. And yes, part of what the change agency is about saying, we're here. We are just as good, if not better, than other folks in this industry. You should be hiring people of color to do not just your outreach work to the Asian community, but to build your website, to create your healthcare strategy, to do your public affairs engagement on this, that, or the other thing. Because to LaTricia's point, we are talented, not just because of who we are, but also because of what we do and what we know and how we do it. And that's a really important thing as well. So that's kind of the next place to go in terms of making it clear that agencies and individuals of color and LGBTQ people should be hired because we're good at this.
Yeah, absolutely. And making that extra effort, as you all are really bringing a point to find the right pro and not just someone you know or the nearest easiest hire, which is probably someone like you already have at the organization, which probably perpetuates the same kind of people, which is probably like the description we're having here. So I love that you all are really consciously helping us think through that. And then in terms of what's coming, how might brands stay ahead of cultural trends and consciously and continuously adapt their strategies? Ben, we'll have you take that.
I feel like I'm going to say the same thing I just said, but it really is by investing time, money, and resources in engaging with people from different cultures, right? So a hint would be, don't fire your entire DEI or diversity team and then expect to be successful in outreach, because we're seeing that. We're seeing companies, organizations, media outlets who made all these lovely promises after George Floyd's murder, and they're not living up to them. And, you know, it was wonderful for a brief moment when companies and organizations were actually saying the right things and seemingly doing the right things. And it felt really hopeful, like this is a turning point that people are now going to actually maybe start doing the work. And no. So that's, you know, that's a reality that needs to be spoken, which is you can't do this work if you're not willing to invest the time, the money, and the resources in doing it.
Yeah,
with the right
absolutely.
people.
Right. Don't make promises, make commitments and follow through. LaTricia, your thoughts?
I think the next couple of months are going to be very challenging where cultural strategies are concerned. I think companies will want to default to a safe space, but we're going to ask that they not do that and that they step into their cultural greatness. You spoke earlier about we're not minorities, we're the global majority. And we have in front of us a very distinctive choice on how our country can go forward. It really is a fork in the road. And one of those forks embraces the global majority that we are. So for companies, this is not a time to sit on the sidelines and just kind of wait to see how the tea leaves go. This is the chance for them to show their leadership, show how DEI has enhanced their business, enhanced their bottom line, and enhanced their internal culture, and lead from those successes if they're brave enough to do it. So I hope that we see companies do just that over the next couple of months and not be kind of silent as they see these divisive issues unfold as we've seen of late.
Absolutely. I underline that with two big fat highlighter lines because it's really important. You know, if you're just thinking about this from a public relations point of view, you're thinking about relationships. And you cannot connect and relate to your community if you don't have relatable people doing the work and helping your organization do the work. So I do hope they be brave, LaTricia, and I hope that organizations will continue to do this very important good work, no matter what road, you know, they come across and whatever, no matter what the popular opinion is at the time, because sentiment can shift, right? But the fundamentals of being a good human and having a good principled organization is timeless.
Exactly.
And so I don't want us to forget that. So thank you for helping us underline that. So this has been delightful, and I'm sure everyone's really thinking about so much of what you all said. So what I like to do is ask all my guests kind of about this phrase that I coined a while back called smart talk, right? So what does smart talk mean to you, LaTricia?
Smart talk means connecting with people with their very authentic selves, bringing all of their expertise to bear with them, but just connecting with people authentically and just in a way that's you understand what your key points are, but you do it in such a manner that people feel like they're just having a conversation with you. But when that conversation ends and they walk away, they're like, you know what? I really learned a lot from that few moments that I had with Melissa, and it resonates with them long term.
Well, I hope that happens. Ben, what does smart talk mean to you?
When LaTricia was talking, I was thinking much like this conversation. I mean, it's a very apt term because it felt like what LaTricia just said was this conversation. I would just add, I thought about this a little bit ahead of time. I would add three things: effective engagement, respectful conversation, and listening and learning. And I think that's what we've done today. At least I hope.
Absolutely. Just a respectful dialogue, right? Around all of this. I encourage everyone, as we're taping this now in August, it'll play latter part of September into October. But as we get closer to some election time or whatnot, let's talk smart, y'all. Let's try to be calming, unifying, respect each other's opinions, share ours in a respectful way, because I think that's how we can really sustain our relationships, no matter what our opinions are, right? And hopefully, in a smart way, opinions can change sometimes. So great. Well, this has been wonderful. And I'm sure so many people want to connect with you two and learn about the change agencies for a variety of reasons. So what's the best way for listeners to connect with the change agencies?
LinkedIn, Facebook at The Change Agencies, or our website, which is www.thechangeagencies.com.
Okay, great. Well, reach out, everyone, if you want to learn more. I think that you would really benefit from engaging with our friends Ben and LaTricia here. Thank you two so much for your time and all your wonderful insight today.
Thank you so much for having us. This was a wonderful discussion.
Thank you. Great, great chat. And I really appreciate being invited. Thank you.
Thanks to our listeners for joining me for today's episode. If you like smart talk and strategic comms, let's collaborate. You can work with me as a trainer, a consultant, or hire my firm, MVW Communications, for strategic comms planning or PR strategy services. My book, Smart Talk, Public Relations Essentials All Pros Should Know, is available on Amazon in print or audio and offers advice, how-to tips, tools, and new PR models so aspiring and practicing pros are equipped for this evolving field. Please follow and rate this podcast if you're a fan, and follow us at MVW to get the latest on trends, trainings, and more. And as always, think smart and communicate smart. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Smart Talk series. If you learned something or enjoyed our conversation, share it on social media or send to a friend. To learn more about this and other communication topics, visit mvw360.com. That's mvw360.com.